Okay, good morning. This morning reminds me of a morning many years ago, September 11th, 2001, when I was actively a part of the original group of families who were diving into trying to find counterculture wellness ways to tend to our children who were still very little back then. And we woke up to what was happening, and we all decided to go sit in the park together quietly with our children. And I think grieve, to bring children into a world where we're actively at war, often, most of the time, seems like these days. And for those of us who woke up to the news, what's going on in the world this morning, here we are. So I'd like to share with you an NGU practice that I have found to be very, very helpful. And it's especially helpful this time of the year. This is February, and in Virginia, we're transitioning from winter to spring. So the clearing that is happening from the winter is ongoing in the woods around me here in Virginia. I'll just invite in and share the spirit of skunk cabbage is coming up. It is a plant in the woods that has very long roots, and it is considered to be quite magical that it will move itself around in the woods and will live for decades. But it also generates its own heat, so it will melt the snow around it, and it will send up a flower this time of the year. And I may go out there and wander around after our class and look for skunk cabbage. It's also food for black bears and snapping turtles. We have lots of monstrous snapping turtles here in our pond that may be waking up and looking for early food. And it is known herbally to help with deep clearing of deep grief. Now, you do have to know what you're doing as an herbalist to utilize this kin plant of ours, but its properties are there, and its energy and its significance for this time of the year is available to us. So here's the NGU that I would also like to share with you this morning that I have found very helpful for clearing and cleansing grief and letting go. And it's this way. It comes from Japanese NGU. It's an indigenous practice. You put your third finger and thumb together and cross your hands like this. So it's, I don't know if you can see. So it's the outside of your hand here and the inside of this hand are going to meet. I will send you a picture later. And I usually lower it once it's here, third finger to thumb. I used to tell people more complicated ways to turn your hand around and put them together like this, but they got confused. So, but this NGU I have found, you just lower your hands in this position onto your lap and do deep, just very simple, deep clearing breaths using your diaphragm to get all the way into your dantian and clear. We think of our skunk cabbage friend being with us to help us cleanse that very deep, deep roots that runs down into swamps. It can clear out whatever needs to be cleared out in the winter to generate its own heat and melt the snow and the ice around itself, send up leaves for nourishment and flowers that attract the earliest flies and beetles to itself. It breaks through and out of the winter cycle and ushers in the living energies of spring and renewal and rebirth. And this Japanese NGU can help us with our neurobiological need to work with our bodies and clear and cleanse this old, heavy energy out of the winter. This energy that got us through the winter that can now be let go. And we can take this practice out in the day with us as we encounter whatever we're going to encounter, and we can return to it. We can return our hands to these Enju positions, these ancient ways of self-regulation, self-awareness, restoring our own energies, renewing our energies in our day, especially releasing the heaviness, the grief that wants to settle on us. We're going to let that go. Take one more deep, deep cleansing, clearing breath. And come into our room together with each other. Thankful for all of our kin who are out there waiting to give us support, especially this time of the year where I am in Virginia. The rebirth and renewal energies are here and they're available to us. Okay, so Cathy Myers, thank you so much for being here with us. You are going to be so impressed with Cathy's incredible knowledge and depth and thoughts that she has put into the field of childcare and policy and what is real and what is not real and what are we told, and separating out our narratives that we just have digested from an industrial dominant worldview. And then when that worldview is applied to the reality of care, it falls apart. Because we have not integrated our evolved nest, our neurobiological needs. So Cathy has done that for us.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm in Durham, North Carolina now. We came here because my daughter is here with her boys, and I have a son also in New Orleans who has a almost 9-year-old. So I have grandchildren from ages 19 to 3. I have a cold currently. We spent a couple days last week with the 3-year-old. So it's a hazard. And I have since the mid-1980s, when my children were little, I have volunteered with the nonprofit organization Family and Home Network. And it was originally founded by 3 mothers, not me, but 3 mothers in 1984, and originally named Mothers at Home. So they were speaking up because they saw that at-home mothers were being erased in the culture, that all of the news stories, everything was about, all the advertisements, everything was about working mothers, and that there was this false dichotomy between working mothers and at-home mothers. And they went and talked to the people at the Department of Labor about how statistics are collected. And anyway, I learned an enormous amount from them, and developed some questions of my own, and then went back years later, about, 25 years later, I guess, when my kids were grown, went back to the George Mason University and finished a bachelor's degree in human development, parenting, and policy. So it was an interdisciplinary, I could pull from different areas. And I took my time and took some grad courses and just went through that carefully. And then when I found out about the Evolved Nest a few years later, I was like, oh, okay, this is like pulling together all these science things that I've discovered and found, but this is bringing it all together in a theory. So I was really thrilled. And then last year took the beta version of the Nesting Ambassadors program. So I'm psyched about that. And I've come to think of being an ambassador for the Evolved Nest when I talk to groups that are working on policy or try to interact with the media or policymakers. And then I feel like I want to take a little bit of a step back and be more like a nesting doula when I'm talking to parents, and kind of try to lead by example. Although I definitely get tested sometimes especially by this 3-year-old. Man, he's a handful. So it's a good reminder of the challenges of parenting, and also live in a co-housing community, so we're trying to do things differently and trying to interact with each other. So there's adults kind of trying to live cooperatively instead of competitively. And those are all good reminders of like on the ground putting things into action. So I'm looking forward to hearing your stories and what you're thinking about. So my organization, for 22 years, we published a monthly journal that we printed and mailed out to people before the internet. And we heard stories from lots of mostly mothers who wrote to us. And our whole culture is set up so that when you're in school, the messages you get are achievement, career success, the values are not, don't make space for the components of the evolved nest. Nobody tells you make sure you have time to play, for example, right? It's like work, 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 work. Take as many AP classes as you can. Get into the best school you can. That's the way we're raising a lot of our kids at this point. So then when people become, especially when mothers become parents, when they have a baby, they have this, mammalian biological response in their bodies, and it's hard to reconcile that with the intellectual messages that you've been getting your whole life. So a lot of people struggle with that. And there's a book by Daphne DeMarnoff called Maternal Desire. And she brought to light, it was first published at least 15 years ago, I think. And so she's a therapist. She has her own children. She became a mother, and it's a wonderful book. I really recommend it. And she talks about this tension in women's lives and how many people she sees struggle with this. And it's really about time at the end of it. We all have the same amount of time, right? So how are we spending that time? And what do we perceive has value? So when the book came out, it got slammed by feminists who were like, well, we shouldn't talk about what mothers desire. That has nothing to do with it. They have to work. They have to, like, there was the whole lean in thing. And really the capitalist view of what women should do in order to be equal to men has really impacted parenting in the US. And Maria, I don't know how much of this applies to Europe and where you are. I mean, we don't have parental leave like that.
We
But
have parental leave, but otherwise, I mean, the culture is a copy paste from the US.
okay.
Basically, there is no much difference, especially in a country in a post-communist country where we had that drive of aligning, with the capitalist system so that we catch up from
Yeah.
behind.
Yeah. So if you can somehow set yourself outside of that capitalism viewpoint and look at capitalism as a force that reinforces itself, that puts that message out there continuously. I mean, there used to be an organization called Corporate Voices for Working Mothers and Working Families, Corporate Voices for Working Families. And they collected millions of dollars from corporations to support working families, put out the message that we needed more childcare. It's all one-sided. And that's the perspective that the Democrats have adopted in the US too. I went to a local Democratic precinct meeting here and brought our proposal to have equitable and inclusive family policies so that we just supported parents who are caring for children and let them decide how to participate in the workforce and how to get care for their children. And this woman said, like, there's shock on the faces of other people. And one woman said to me, "Are you even a Democrat?" I mean, it was just, the perspective of somebody who wants to spend more time with their kids is so out of alignment with the message, and the message has been funded. So there's PR firms, and there's polling places, and there's advertisements, and there's media. The people in the media are largely working families, middle class, upper middle class, and they're reinforcing the message too. So it's you have to take a step out of the mainstream, I guess, in order to really look at the components of the evolved nest, what you desire as a parent, and acknowledge that and look at expectations. Like, what expectations have you absorbed from the culture, and which ones do you want to challenge at this point? And it's hard to find the camaraderie to do that. I mean, the isolation question is big. Right now, there's a big issue with, we're trying to get our heads around, like, what is this stuff about trad wives, and why did that catch on as a thing? And how does that, I mean, my neighbor who was home with her son for a year and is back at work, which is common. People go in and out of the workforce. But when she was home, a relative said to her, "Oh, you're a trad wife now." People are so quick to label and to assume
Yeah.
and to make fun of people's choices. There are examples of how women and men can move in and out of the workforce. And that's really the reality. People don't, corporate careers are not what they were for a long time. We're still operating like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Corporations are laying off people. People are bouncing around to doing different things. And so, but people who step out of the workforce, there's that uncertainty of, what am I going to do next? And luckily, there are some organizations that tell stories. I can't come up with the name of this one right now that I'm thinking about, but I have to look at my website. That's why, that's my memory bank there, the names of all these places. But she tells stories about people who go back to work, and one that I really loved, and I contacted this woman and talked to her, but she was out of the workforce for 30 years, raising her own children and then doing elder care. Which I've also done, in an intergenerational household. And she went back as an engineer, and she told her story. So this story is, there were podcasts about these people's stories, like how did they get connected again to the workforce? And in her case, she took some classes on 3D printing, and now she's back. She has a full, busy career in 3D printing and stuff. But anyway, there's lots of examples on this on this website, and if you want it, I'll get it to you later. Relaunch, that's what it is. Like a little relaunch. And but she just decided to do this on her own, and she's built this business, and she has also connected with a lot of companies who are looking for people with experience, and she's she's been able to fund this work. It's not a nonprofit, it's a for-profit company, but there's not a lot of that being done. And one of the things that we've noticed over the years is that like places that support parents in spending time with their kids. For example, I saw a discussion about medical training, about what do you call it, when people go to residencies. Like, some places are much more supportive of residents who are also parents and their need for flexibility. Other places are not. It would be great to get that information collected and make it available to people who want it, but nobody's funding that work. We don't even have the capacity to spread the news about these other things people are doing other than this straight capitalist, career ladder achievement kind of thing. And No, during the pandemic, a lot of people worked at home and loved it. And then there's been all this controversy about companies insisting that you come back to the workforce, and parents who appreciated the flexibility of being able to go pick up their kids at work, leaving their jobs or looking for other things, and just really, finding that ridiculous and inhumane. So at least there's some discussion about it.
I would say, Cathy, I'll just tack on to that, and it goes to Maria's original question of identity. Is I do see a shift out there looking at the discussion younger people are having. And I am really impressed with men who are talking about their roles and identities as fathers and getting prepared for that. I have a good friend whose son has an entire website about helping fathers understand what shape their bodies are in and their sperm is in before they ever conceive, and what are they contributing to the health of the placenta and the mother's complications during pregnancy and the lifelong health of their child. So this integrating of an identity for males into this relationship and is really, I can see them reclaiming it, and it really is a counter to the Industrial Revolution, sending the dad off out of the home 150 years ago. So men were not really a part of the harmonic resonance of a family home. That's being healed, I see, by young people. Douglas, what do you have to tack on about that or anything?
Yeah, interesting conversation. Thanks, Cathy. Cathy, I'm a physician, so I appreciate what you said about healthcare and residents. I'm a plastic surgeon. I'm in Vancouver in Canada, and part of a residency training program, we train residents, and we have lots of female trainees, and we have a really good maternity leave policy for them, which works well. Being a resident is a hard job, whether you're male or female, because in addition to being a student, learning a complex system and a set of tasks, you're also part of a caregiving team, and so you have like social responsibility to patients as people as well. So it's something you can't really walk away from. So it's an interesting challenge. I think my reflection on the conversation is that one of the problems with our current world is that we're too beholden to institutions, the institution of X or the institution as a place, like work, government, corporations, etc. And we kind of give them more power in our minds than we give to ourselves as human beings. And like what Marie was saying about meaningful work has become the community. Like, so when Maria goes off to have her baby and she feels isolated, it's because there's no community outside of work. And we need to find a way to build community that's not just work. I was at a really interesting session the other day. I'm part of a group which is known as Human Rights and Climate Change Working Group. And there's a bunch of international people, and mostly they're young, really intelligent women from all over the developing world. And they were talking about the way social change happens. And one is through legal challenges, like these are my rights, I'm going to court, I want them, and then that will change the way society has to behave, but slowly. One is governance, which is like what's known as the third university, where you use the rules of the system to create change. Like, for instance, creating a DEI committee at your institution where there isn't one, and then having DEI become part of your culture when it wasn't before. And then the other one, which is the slowest, but sounds like the most hopeful perhaps based on this conversation, is generational, where behavior just gradually changes in one direction, hopefully for the better, as each new generation learns what the right thing to do is. So it's really interesting because it dovetails with what you're talking about. Like, change is a challenge, and we just seem to be locked into an institutional view of the world that we as people don't seem to be able to get ourselves out of, even though that's not who we think we really are.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I I think that my major concern is just that the Evolve Nest and my organization and Pam's organization and other people that are working for the needs of humans are not funded anywhere near what the capitalists are funding. And in fact, Melinda Gates gathered together venture capitalists and had a whole, I think that website is still up there. It's like the care economy is worth X billion dollars a year. Like the unpaid caregiving that's being done is worth X billion dollars a year. This is a great market opportunity. That's a direct quote from her, from this website. So she was getting these venture capitalists to put millions of dollars into lobbying the government to fund care services. So their view of the world is nobody should have to do care. It's like for yourself, because that's like it's a mixed feeling. Like we want to respect caregivers, but we don't want to do it ourselves. We want the government to pay somebody else to do the caregiving. So it's a really screwed up perspective. But they raised a lot of money, and they are the dark money behind some of these groups that present themselves as grassroots parents organizations, and they'll be like, well, we need more childcare, and it's never like we need more support for care for children and let parents decide how to provide that care. It's always we need more childcare services. And in the US anyway, a lot of childcare is provided by for-profit companies. So they're not in this business because they're out of the goodness of their hearts. There are people making a lot of money on this and putting a lot of money into promoting it, lobbying, and shaping public opinion and stuff. So, sometimes I get a little discouraged about the kind of effort to get the word out. But I've been in lots of places where I'm the one person saying, well, is this really equitable or just? I would love to find a way to sue policymakers for making these policies that are not equitable and just, because that's what we have currently. We have funding only for care for children when it's provided by others, but not when it's provided by a parent. So it's a control thing. It's like we can't trust parents. We have to control this. And there's a lot of mythology about only the early childhood educators know what to do to raise and educate children. That's not true. But if you undermine parents and you keep telling them only the early childhood educators know what to do with your children, and they need this and they need this, the parents aren't going to feel empowered to build their own skills, to learn how to negotiate with a 3-year-old. So
when my kids, who are now 37, 39, 41, 43, when my kids were little, my wife was a stay-at-home mom and was fantastic. Like, they got everything that they needed. But there were mother-child play groups and things. Like, they would go to the community center and all the moms and all the kids would be there. Mm-hmm. And then, like, there was someone there who did like the baby babysitting while the moms could have a swim in the pool or whatever. But they helped and supported and learned from each other. And they had a community, right? They actually, they would get together for tea and they would meet at the park and other things too. Like, we actually had a community of people that looked after each other and raised kids.
Right.
I mean, I was a surgical resident. I was like working all day, every day. Like,
crazy hours, yeah.
But I, at least for whatever reason I don't know, I at least committed all my spare time to my kids and not to like going out and doing other stuff. Mm-hmm. That's just by chance, I guess.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, the choice that you made together to have one parent at home gave you more time with your children. If you had both been working, you would have been doing errands and, helping with meals and doing laundry and doing all the other things that have to be done by somebody. But, well, or maybe, I don't know, some people hire more help, I guess, for that. But,
yeah, we had a great time when my kids were little because our landlords, we lived in the bottom of a duplex that was up and down, and our landlords lived next door in the other house, and they let me do whatever I wanted with the property as long as I looked after it. So I rebuilt the fence, and we had a garden, and we grew corn in our backyard, and we dug up the front yard and had onions and potatoes and carrots, and the kids loved it. Like, so we made our life with what we could afford where we were. We made it fun. So
Right.
I think those things are important. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I would love to hear more of those stories and tell more of those stories and tell more stories about what's going on now. It's tough though. I mean, for me, it's just a matter of time, that of a certain amount of time to get out there and do these things. And
Well, Maria, you need to build the new mother's nest in Romania, and then you won't be alone.
Oh, yeah. So what I see people doing and what I have been doing is like somehow not living the system, because you cannot live the system, but it's like living like a more of a parallel life to the system. But it takes a lot of courage. It takes despair, to be honest, because very often people say, "Oh, you were so brave in doing this and that," and I say I was so desperate I wasn't brave enough. But I see a lot of people around me that they are desperate just to make little changes in their lives that would give them, more nesting, more time with, in community and stuff like that. But they are so worried, I don't know, that they will die of starvation, that they will lose their jobs, that it's like they have their hands tied, and they are suffering a lot at the same time, especially mothers. So it really, oh my God, it's really painful, because as I said, I've had a beautiful experience as a mother, and I've had it because I continued doing, so my life didn't change. It's just that I integrate the baby in my life. And as you said, dog community, that's so important, because there was the stuff that I did at home, as Amy says, with the baby attached to you, and I was writing and doing research and stuff like that. But I also went to conferences and to courses, and I met with people, and I met in community, and I created other opportunities for other mothers to meet outside of my professional life. So that kept me sane, because the baby was just a human that was welcomed into the life that we already had. So
mhm.
it's easy. That's why I feel like an alien when I say that motherhood was was a nice experience for me, especially with a newborn, because all she wanted was to be held and to have the breasts. So if she had the breast and the in-arm experience, that's all they need. But mothers are usually, they are just so scared and isolated, and it breaks my heart, because everyone is suffering. And yeah, so what we are doing, because it's very important to get, like this kind of inspiration and the courage from other people, that it's possible, that it's doable, and also uh, like the encouragement that you will be held. I mean, there are people around you, friends or maybe strangers, that you just get to meet now in this journey, that will hold you. They will not let you, drown, or I don't know, especially because the socioeconomic part is so, I don't know, it's crazy nowadays. I mean, people who used to have like very decent income and living a good life, now they are worrying about eating tomorrow. And that's also something that weighs a lot in people's efforts and decisions to make actual changes in their lives. And they are suffering in this conflict of, I need that, but I am not able to do it.
Right.
One of the pieces of the evolved nest that I find to be most empowering is the phrase, and we started to try to use this more and more, communal evolved nest. We were never meant to do this alone. We were never meant to do this alone. We're never meant to structure an entire community, institutions, public policy around isolating parents from culture, and also letting culture get a pass on the responsibility for the care children receive for the very short time that we have them, and parents have the capacity to nurture. It is such a very short time, and when everyone who's in here has grandchildren knows, it's just here and gone. And it was, the same for me that I've heard for a lot of people. By the time you figure it out, your child's grown and gone, and you're trying to pull together, which is something we're doing right now, is pull together wisdom to share with parents who are in it, or people who are getting ready to have families, to remind them that we were supposed to do this together and communally, and let's imagine what that would be like. And I feel, when I bring forward this story and worldview, I feel the guilt and shame and relief from that coming. And like, oh, it kind of feels like I'm not supposed to be doing this by myself in isolation, but what else is there? What else is there? That's always the question underneath trying to reimagine how else are we going to do this? What else is there? And we have bits of that story, and that's what we're trying to bring coherence to now.
Yeah.
So who would like to have
can I add something?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think our stories about how we overcome isolation are really important. And for me, when my kids were young, I joined a babysitting co-op, and ended up just trading with one other parent that I found, one other family. And we would, my kids would go to her house a couple days a week, and her kids would come to my house, and she worked a couple days a week as a nurse, and her husband worked as a radio broadcaster, so their schedules were always changing. And sometimes I had her kids through dinner time, and then her husband would come pick them up, and it was just flexible, and we cared for those kids together. And we're very fortunate that now we all ended up in the same town here in North Carolina, so we see them, and we see their grown kids and grandkids. And an institutional or a governmental thing. Well, it's not governmental. It's a nonprofit in New Orleans that provides this relief from isolation. Was started by two women who just said there's got to be a better way to support parents, and they've been very successful. They actually started about maybe 8 years ago or so. And when I was there caring for my grandson, who was 2 at the time, a friend took us there, and it's called the We Play Center. And it's in a community center that's right next to a low-income housing development. And they have a room set up kind of like a preschool room, and they welcome parents there. And it's more than about the space. It's about the philosophy and the interaction from the people who founded it, from the people they trained, and they are skilled in supporting parents in breastfeeding and supporting parents in early childhood. But they trust the parents too. They welcome the parents to come, and they make everybody feel welcome and comfortable there. And it's such a wonderful place. It is my favorite place that I've seen so far, and I'm hoping that it will spread. There are a couple of them now in New Orleans, and I really am trying to advocate for them to come here to Durham. Because what I find here, I took my little grandson to an open gym here at one of the gyms, and it was just so different. It was like they opened the gym, you had to sign in, they let you go in. There was no staff. They put a couple like balls and a couple toys there, and it was just so cold and so unwelcoming to parents. And it just makes such a difference in how you respect parents and you welcome them. And there are a lot of places where you can pay to go. But if you can't afford to pay to go to some place, what is there? Where are the public places for parents? They don't really exist in many communities. I have spent like my whole life doing unpaid work. And I feel good about it. I don't feel like I needed to have a career, in the traditional terms of a career. Having the freedom to do this, I homeschooled my kids when they were young, and then they went to school, and I was the PTA president, and the principal died, and I organized a whole big community-wide memorial for him. And I did things that I wanted to do that I would not have been able to do without the flexibility that I had. We renovated our house. I managed that project. My parents came to live with us. My dad had a stroke. My mom had cancer. I did a lot of caregiving. And then and my friend went through a terrible divorce, and she and her daughter came to live with us. I'm not sure I would have had the capacity to make space for them and do that if I hadn't been at home and not trying to work a different job. All this time I was working with Family and Home Network, and I did get paid part-time for some of that when we were doing a lot of publishing. But my commitment was always to, I guess, to doing the caregiving that I saw that needed to be done. And about 10 years ago, my husband and I moved to Durham to be close to my daughter, who was a single mother at the time, and to help with her kids. And we moved to this co-housing community. And it's been challenging in a lot of ways. I mean, people, you have to make decisions about things. Like we own a community house together. So people have to make decisions about the lights. Some of the lights got broken in the dining room. So what lights are we going to replace with them? And building a playground, there was a lot of conflict about that. And I still think, anyway, but it's like living out some of the principles of the evolved nest that we find challenging sometimes. And I say that in meetings sometimes. I say, we're trying to do things differently. Like there's not a hierarchy here. There's not one person in charge of this. We're 22 households. We're trying to decide together how to manage the common land that we own. We all own our own homes, but thank goodness. But we own some things in community. So that's been a challenging experience. And I go to meetings in the community and I ask questions that, like I said, challenge people's ideas about what's progressive, what do women need? And we kind of try to remind people that people are diverse. Families do all kinds of things. A lot of parents are asking for decent part-time work. And it's hard to come by. Our government policies could support more part-time work. Our government policies could require insurance companies to write disability policies for at-home parents. There's one state, I think, the last time I looked, there was one state that still required that because the insurance laws are managed state by state. But otherwise, insurance companies will not write a policy for an at-home parent because they see no value in that work. So it puts families with an at-home parent at risk. That parent is doing work. I mean, if you just look at it from a work perspective, they're doing care work, they're doing other work for the home. And if that person becomes disabled, there's no insurance to cover them because they are looked at from the perspective of the economy as having done nothing. So there are a lot of things that we could change with policy, and we could make people's lives more flexible and encourage people to do what works for their families. But we're not quite there yet. I'm still working on it, and I hope to keep on learning more. And if you have any ideas, please let me know.
The unpaid work part for the intense labor that goes into child raising is being called out again by the global women's strike that's happening in March. And looking for Rianne Eisler is a part of that. And if you follow her work, it's coming up. I'm trying to find a link for it.
I think it's March 9th.
Okay, March 9th.
International Women's Day. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so I'll find that and share that with you as well. So these are, issues that are being addressed globally in many countries. The unpaid work of women that keeps capitalism going, and men, caregivers. And all of our strategies to try and make bearable a system that is just inhumane at its core. We need to give ourselves grace and all the self-love and self-care we can come up with in recognition of what we are up against, and not again in a victim way, but in a this is radical acceptance. And that's why we get our game on with our grief in Jews and our breathing, our nature connection exercises, so we can stay grounded and continue to do the work together. So we're at the end of our time together. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to share before we close?
Ellie, you need to tell your kids that you can row faster than they can row. Give them a challenge, and then they'll come with you, and then get them out in a scull and see what happens.
All right, I'm putting this last.
Thank you, Douglas.
I don't know. I had my oldest son was very competitive as an athlete. He was always the kid that just made the team. He was like the kid that could have got cut but didn't. And he was so determined. He ended up playing water polo for Canada. Yeah. So
I told them to come because there are some things passing me and they're saying, eat my dust. And they say, my kids say, do they really say that?
That's great. Well, maybe you found the thing that's going to grab their attention.
Right.
Thanks all.
Right.
Nice to meet
thank
you,
you all.
Cathy.
Okay, let's just do this real quick. I like to end this way. Just kind of, we're going to put our hands to the outside of our screen. So turn your hands around, push them to the outside, see where your screen is. And now, no matter where we are, we're holding our hands together in a circle. So we just made our virtual circle. We're sharing our virtual energies. And we're here for you all week. If you need anything in between classes, let me know. Thank you so much, Cathy, for coming and sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's great to meet you.